So when you look at like 70 dogs potentially like coming to daycare, right? Like that's one thing that I've always looked at as far as a lot of the daycares around us, like that do 90 dogs, 100 dogs, stuff like that. And I look at that and I'm just like, oh my God, that just gives me so much anxiety thinking about it.
Yeah.
What, like, obviously you're doing things different. Like we always preach, like when it comes to looking for daycares, find daycares that have a good emphasis on training and understanding of the animal behavior so that your safety is higher naturally, right? So what sorts of things do you guys do when you have a group that large in order to keep the zen?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that we have in the building helped us a lot is different areas. So we have the big outdoor yard. We have a front room. We call the ballroom. It's an actual toy room, which is a whole other thing that we do. We have another room in the back. We have 2 like crate areas, the upstairs space and downstairs. And then we can divide another space up. So essentially
you keep the group smaller.
It depends. So like it's really focused on the dog's needs throughout the day. So like, yes, I have maybe, we have some standard rules that we like to follow. So one is groups of 2. So let's say I've got 10 dogs in the yard and they're like, sometimes they beautifully pair off and they play with each other. But if all of a sudden that group starts moving together, hey, we're going to break them up. So maybe this dog's going to take a crate break. Maybe this dog's going to go in this room. So there's a learning curve for staff and you just have to know your dogs really well. So now like, we know all the dogs that are there. We know their quirks and, so some dogs come in and they're out the whole time. Like our front room is for like nap, like if dogs want to hang out, but we don't have to put them up. And it's only for dogs that can read the room. So I can't have a group of, and we have dogs that are boarding. So it's not just like young dogs that are there to play. So let's say I have dogs that are just like trying to nap on the beds and, kind of a regular group. And then I bring in like I said, like a 8-month-old lab. And they're like spinning around the room. Yes, like those are like when you talk about daycare issues, those are the biggest ones. And, and then you get these dogs that are napping that are like, all right, well, I'm going to snap at any dog that comes near me because this is how I get space. And then you get these puppies that are like, well, if I start running, I might get bit, so I'm going to start also biting the dogs that are running. So it's like managing energy and play. It's the summer's a little easier. The dogs get tired, it gets hot. But it's your staff has to know what they're doing, and we preach is rotation. So there's like a balance of, yes, we could spend time training this behavior, but a lot of daycares focus on management. So like moving dogs. There's some other like basic rules. Like we don't let the dogs do like a lot of like dog packy stuff. Like we don't let them go bark at the fence. Even like howling at sirens, stuff that's like funny and innocent. Like we are always intervening ourselves. Like they can't bust their rooms and things. So some basic
things that get them like just respecting you guys
100%. Like wow, these people are relevant and they're not just like chasing after us.
Can I add to that?
Please do.
A big part of, so I still do daycare for I don't know 2.5 hours in the morning depending on the day, and a big part of it is moving dogs just constantly throughout the room. So there's like essentially 5 different areas the dogs can be in, because we have our big outdoor yard and then we also have a smaller fenced in area of that yard. And that's like an indoor outdoor space. So in that, like, so if staff is rotating throughout those areas that we're watching. So if I'm in, like, we call it the back bay is the area, the smaller fenced in area. And if I go in and I'm in there for 20 minutes or so, and when I leave the same exact dogs are still in there, then I've done something wrong. So the dogs really depending, and what Amanda said, like a lot of it's depending on what the dogs need throughout the day. It's not just this dog does better in this yard. It's like right now this dog has a lot of energy. So if they run in the main yard, they're going to get tagged by their dogs. Other dogs will chase them and try to catch them with their mouth. But if they go, so we call it like the back bay, they can kind of mingle around. But like, okay, now that dog is tired and they've laid down, and they'll snap at any dog who walks by them. So that's why they can go to the front room and they can nap, because dogs in the front room respect dogs who need to nap. So it's just a constant moving. I mean, I'll see Amanda like pop in every once in a while. She'll grab 7 dogs and send 6 more back in. I mean, they move a lot. We don't want dogs to get stuck in a place where nobody's helping them.
That's a really great way to look at it, because I feel like a lot of the other places that will do it, they don't have that level of thought and attention to it. It's more so like, well, this dog's starting to become a problem, so we'll give them a break.
Right.
It's not being more proactive about reading these situations and adjusting based on what that dog needs. You know? And this has always been my internal dilemma with like daycare type settings and stuff, even when we were doing ours and everything, is understanding what the individual dog needs and understanding that some of these dogs, 12 hours is so long.
Oh, so long.
It's so freaking long.
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
owners want them to be just out and playing the whole freaking time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, I might know that some of these dogs that come in would benefit from just 1 hour of just like running around and playing and having a good time, and then they're fine.
Yep.
Right? And then you start pushing that envelope, you start creating more problems. But it's balancing like then having a good enough relationship with that owner to have that conversation of, listen, like you're going to bring your dog to this and I promise you they're going to have a great time and they're going to be really, really impacted from this experience, but they're only going to be out for 45 minutes or an hour or something like that.
Right.
You have to get them to trust you with that. And that's a part of elbowing things.
Yeah.
That's a part of, we're currently in the process of restructuring and adding back in our daycare once our new facility is kind of renovated and stuff. And one of the things that I'm trying to really cater it more towards, which is another thing I was excited to talk to you guys about, is more of kind of an enrichment day kind of thing where it's not contingent on the dog playing with other dogs the entire freaking day, right?
Yeah.
Like there are other things we could do to stimulate this dog to make sure that they're getting the most out of the socialization. Because socialization, we were talking about this with the idea of service dogs and stuff, it's so important, right? Like teaching a dog to interact properly with dogs, humans, and environments is like the key of all good training, I think. Right. And the commands and the obedience and stuff like that you teach just facilitates being able to do that better. Right. So by adding in all of these other enrichment services, we can justify having a dog at our facility for an entire day while spending only the amount of time that we need actually socializing the dog to help them keep moving along. Right. Because I don't care so much about, I think boarding is very essential. Daycare, I think, is essential from the standpoint of teaching good social skills. But if you really break it down and somebody like couldn't take their dog to daycare for a month, like that dog's gonna be okay if they sit in a crate all day, So I'm really trying to look at like how do we keep moving that service in the right direction. And like I said, like that's the thing I've always respected about you guys. I think you guys are doing a really good job of that right now.
Thank you.
These are some really really interesting points and ideas you're bringing up as far as how you do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It can be conflicting for me. So like, obviously I'm a trainer and like, that's my mindset, but a lot of my clients are not here for that. Yeah. Like a lot of my clients are not part of our training service. So there's certainly like a balance, where there's some dogs that I'm like, man, like, and we'll tell people, like we definitely will say like, hey, you should bring your dog less or, and that's important, especially an age thing. Like we'll get a lot of dogs that are like Goldens at their first 2 years. This is great. And then they're kind of done. And it's a hard conversation. Like owners get really upset. I'm like, hey, your dog really doesn't need this. But it's a balance. Or like sometimes we just like maybe I have a dog that someone's like, I can't leave this dog alone. And like the trainer in me is like,
kind of like that's a trainer.
I think you should. Like I think you should. But at the same time, I sort of enable it because I'm like, okay, this dog comes to daycare. So it's always kind of this balance of like wearing both hats and being respectful of the people that. So, but yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot. Like daycare is a gift and a curse. Like we obviously it's what we do and we do it the best we can. But certainly, like people say, like can my dog get hurt? Yes. Can my dog learn bad habits? Yes. Like you raise the risk of these things. So yeah.
So I really appreciate that you guys have made these different spots. Like you were saying, some dogs just want to chill.
Yeah.
So my girlfriend used to work at a daycare that shall not be named.
Okay.
But they had a couple of red flags that you guys have mitigated. The first thing was they never put a cap on their intake.
Wow.
And they were a bit of a smaller facility, but it was just like, everybody come on in, and then they would just be overloaded, and then there's no place because they were, like I said, a small facility, and then you'd have those dogs that are trying to like chill, but they're literally getting trampled because there's no place, and they never like came up with a system like a reservation or timeout for some of these other dogs. It just got like worse and worse. She had to leave because it was just so stressful. Like it wasn't just stressful for the dogs, but the people were like losing their minds because it's like you have to worry about something every moment, and you guys have been able to like mitigate that.
From not to the best of your abilities. I mean, again, like you were saying, there will always be risks.
Always risk. But you've definitely taken so many steps to like
Yeah.
mitigate.
Yeah, thank you.
anything,
Yeah,
you know?
we're a little obsessed with it.
Yeah.
In terms of that, and I think staff coming, I would say like 60 or 70% of my staff came from like other daycares.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I love, sometimes I don't. But and like we'll say the same kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
like they'll be like, or they have habits. Like they'll hear a small noise and they'll be like,
Yeah.
and I'll
That's
just
the
be like,
worst
what are
one.
you doing?
Yeah,
you know,
we're
like
not
I'll just be
freaking
like,
out.
you need to, like I've had staff literally, I'll be like, hey, you need to like chill.
Yeah.
Everything's okay. Let's just like look. And they'll be like, I'm sorry, it's just a bad habit. You know, they'll start like
Yeah,
yelling and like
yeah.
running.
You get so like
And I'm
tweaked
yeah,
out. You know, like we see
and
that
I'm like,
all the
I'm
time
like,
too.
everything's okay. You know, like we're even if there is conflict, I'm like, okay, like let's just like my staff, I'll be standing, I'm like, okay, let's like actually just watch this for a minute, you know,
Yeah.
and see this kind
Yeah.
of thing. But
Having war flashbacks.
yeah, like they literally, they'll be like PTSD.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, hey, you know, you're okay. Like everything's okay.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, what do I do? I'm like, we're gonna move the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. You know.
Oh, that's it.
Quietly.
Yeah.
It's always funny watching like either people who have worked at other daycares before or people who haven't, right? It's always funny watching how everybody handles their first like dog altercation.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it's like-
Yeah.
we'll see it sometimes like something will happen and like you'll see like two dogs start fighting or something and you just kind of like look around.
Yeah.
And you'll see everybody's just like
Yeah. Or some people like run in the middle, but they're not doing anything. They're, just, like, they're also freaking out. But yeah,
Yeah.
those are good learning moments. And I
Yeah.
always tell my staff, I'm like, anytime there's something, we miss something.
sure.
You
Yeah.
know, like
100%.
like, we, those are always, and clients, they'll be like, it happened out of nowhere. I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
It didn't.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.